Welcome to my channel, where the scariest stories come to life. Before we dive into today's chilling tale, make sure to hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications, so you never miss a story. Now, let's get into the horror. Hey everyone! I can't shake what happened to me and my friends on our annual road trip last year, so I thought I'd share. It was me, Jess, my best friend Amy, and two other friends, Sarah and Liz. We decided to take a road trip from our city to a remote cabin in the mountains to get away for the weekend. It was supposed to be a fun adventure, but things went horribly wrong on the way there. We left late in the evening to avoid traffic. By the time we hit the mountain roads, it was around midnight. We were driving through this really isolated, winding road with no cell service when, all of a sudden, these flashing red and blue lights appeared behind us. We all thought it was a routine stop, so Amy, who was driving, pulled over. As we waited, something didn't feel right. The car behind us was an old, unmarked sedan, and the lights didn't have the professional look of a typical police vehicle. They were kind of janky and uneven. A man in a police uniform slowly approached our car. He looked the part from a distance, but up close, his uniform seemed ill-fitting, wrinkled, and slightly stained. He tapped on the window, and Amy only rolled it down a crack. "Evening, ladies. Do you know why I pulled you over?" he said. His voice was calm, but it didn't match the situation. It felt forced, almost rehearsed. Amy, trying to stay composed, asked for his badge number. His face twitched slightly, and he smiled a creepy smile. The second he turned around, Sarah hissed, "Amy, drive. Now." Amy didn't need to be told twice. She slammed her foot on the gas, and we sped off into the darkness. I looked back and saw the man running towards his car, clearly not expecting us to bolt. Our hearts were racing, and we were all freaking out. What if he caught up to us? We had no way to call for help. We sped through those winding roads, trying to put as much distance between us and him as possible. Eventually, we saw lights up ahead, a 24-hour diner. Amy pulled in, and we all scrambled inside. We told the diner staff what happened, and they let us use their phone to call the real police. When the officers arrived, they took our statements and informed us that there had been reports of a fake police car harassing travelers on that road. We were lucky to have trusted our instincts and sped away. The police assured us that we did the right thing and promised to increase patrols in that area. We never did make it to the cabin that night. Instead, we stayed at a nearby hotel, too shaken to continue our trip. This experience has haunted me ever since. I still get chills thinking about what could have happened if we hadn't driven off. Every time I'm on a road trip, I'm extra cautious, especially when driving through isolated areas at night. Stay safe out there, everyone. And always trust your gut. This happened last fall on a road trip my buddies and I took to explore some of the less traveled routes in the Southwest. We were on a long, dusty stretch of highway in Arizona, surrounded by nothing but desert and scrubland for miles. Our plan was to push through to the next town, but as night fell, we realized we were running dangerously low on gas and needed to find a station soon. Finally, in the distance, we saw a flickering neon sign. Relieved, we decided to check it out. But as we got closer, it became clear the place was abandoned, an old gas station with rusted pumps, standing as a relic of the past. Desperate for fuel, we pulled in, hoping we might find something useful. The place gave us the creeps immediately. The windows of the small building were shattered, and an eerie silence hung over everything. The only sound was the wind whistling through broken glass. We split up to look for anything we could use. My friend Sam and I decided to check out the building, while the others stayed by the car. Inside, it was a mess. Dusty shelves, a toppled cash register, and yellowed newspapers scattered across the floor. A foul, lingering smell of decay made my stomach turn. As we rummaged through the shelves, we heard a faint noise coming from the back room, soft, shuffling sounds. Cautiously, I opened the door and aimed my flashlight inside. The beam landed on a huddled figure in the corner. A man, dirty and disheveled, muttering to himself. At first, he didn't acknowledge us and just kept rocking back and forth, whispering incoherently. Sam called out, "Hey, are you okay?" The man slowly lifted his head, and his eyes met mine, wild and frenzied. Then, out of nowhere, he screamed, "They're coming! They're coming for us all," before lunging at us. We scrambled out of the room, hearts pounding, and sprinted back to the car, where we told the others what had happened. Everyone was on edge, debating whether to leave immediately or try to find gas. That's when we noticed headlights approaching in the distance. Relieved, we assumed it was help. But as the vehicle drew closer, we realized it was an old, beat-up truck. The truck stopped a few yards away, and two rugged-looking men stepped out, each carrying a hunting rifle. They approached us cautiously, their grim expressions only adding to our anxiety. "You folks lost?" one of them asked. We explained our situation, hoping they might help. The men exchanged uneasy glances before one said, "You shouldn't be here. This place, it's not safe." Before we could ask what he meant, we heard the crazed man from the building screaming again. The two men tensed, glancing toward the building before quickly telling us to follow them. They led us to a shed behind the gas station, where they pried open a rusty old fuel tank. "There's still some gas in here," one said, his voice low. While we siphoned the remaining fuel into our car, the men stood guard, their eyes darting nervously into the darkness. They kept their rifles at the ready, as though expecting something, or someone, to emerge. Once we had enough gas to get to the next town, they urged us to leave immediately. "There are things out here," one of them said gravely, "things no one talks about. People disappear out here." We didn't need to be told twice. We thanked them, piled into the car, and sped off into the night. As we drove away, the headlights of their truck disappeared into the darkness, leaving us with an overwhelming sense of dread. We didn't stop until we reached the next town, where we finally filled up the tank and felt safe enough to catch our breath. To this day, we still don't know what was really going on at that abandoned gas station, or what the two men were so afraid of. All I know is that it was the most terrifying experience of my life, and I'll never look at remote highways the same way again. So, my son Alex had just turned 17 and got his driver's license. We found a great deal on a used car online, but it was located in another state, about 8 hours away. I thought it would be a perfect opportunity for Alex to get some driving experience, and the price was just too good to pass up. We hit the road early on a Saturday morning, excited for the adventure. The drive was pleasant at first, just me and my boy talking about life and enjoying the scenery. But as we crossed state lines into more rural areas, things started to get strange. We noticed an old pickup truck tailgating us aggressively. At first, I thought it was just an impatient driver, so I signaled and moved over to let him pass. But instead of overtaking us, the truck swerved and rammed the rear of our vehicle. "What the hell?" Alex exclaimed, gripping the wheel tightly. I instructed him to stay calm and accelerate, but the truck matched our speed, swerving erratically and trying to force us off the road. I told Alex to stay focused on driving while I grabbed my phone to call 911. The operator picked up, and I frantically explained our situation. They said the closest police station was quite a distance away, but assured us that they would send help immediately. They advised us to keep driving toward them. For the next 30 minutes, we were in a high-speed chase, our hearts racing as we tried to avoid the deranged driver. The truck would swerve alongside us, sometimes coming alarmingly close. I caught a glimpse of the driver's face, twisted in rage and madness. At one point, the truck pulled up beside us, and I noticed weapons scattered on his passenger seat. My blood ran cold. I kept updating the 911 operator on our location. Alex was doing an incredible job driving, despite the fear evident in his eyes. I kept reassuring him, and myself, that the police were on their way. Every now and then, the truck would back off, only to come roaring up behind us again, making the situation even more desperate. Finally, we saw flashing blue and red lights up ahead. A sense of relief washed over us as multiple police cars sped toward us. When we reached the officers, they had already set up a blockade. The truck skidded to a stop, and the driver was quickly surrounded by armed police. From a safe distance, Alex and I watched as they arrested the driver and searched his vehicle. The scene was surreal. They pulled out an array of suspicious items, multiple knives, a handgun, duct tape, rope, and even heavy-duty zip ties. The police thanked us for staying calm and keeping them updated with our location. They told us the driver had a history of violent behavior and that it was a good thing we called when we did. Alex and I were shaken but incredibly grateful to be safe. What was supposed to be a simple father-son bonding experience had turned into a nightmare. We eventually made it to buy the car, but the journey left us both much more cautious and appreciative of each other. Stay safe on the roads, everyone, and always be vigilant. So, about 6 months ago, my friends and I decided to go on a road trip to celebrate graduating college. Our plan was to drive from LA to Denver, taking the scenic route. It was supposed to be the adventure of a lifetime, but things took a terrifying turn on the second night of our trip. We were driving through Nevada, somewhere near the Great Basin, and it was getting late. The highway was deserted when we saw a guy on the side of the road, thumb out, looking for a ride. We debated for a bit, but thinking he might need help, we decided to pick him up. The guy, who introduced himself as Jeff, seemed normal at first. He was in his mid-30s, a bit scruffy, wearing a baseball cap and backpack. He said his car had broken down further up the road and that he was trying to get to the next town. We figured it wouldn't be a big deal to give him a lift. After about 10 minutes or so, Jeff started talking about weird stuff, serial killers, unsolved murders, and the kind of things that make your hair stand on end. Don't get me wrong, I enjoy listening to podcasts and watching YouTube videos about that kind of stuff, but hearing it in the middle of the night, in the middle of nowhere, from a complete stranger was just unnerving. We laughed it off at first, thinking he was just trying to freak us out. But the more he talked, the more unsettling it got. He knew way too many details about these crimes. The creepiest thing was how much detail he went into about the injuries and manner of death. At one point, he asked if he could use my phone to check something. I handed it over, but instead of checking anything, he started going through my personal photos and messages. I asked for it back, and he gave me this creepy smile before handing it over, saying, "Nice pictures. You've got a cute family." That sent chills down my spine. I noticed Jake, who was driving, kept glancing at Jeff through the rearview mirror, looking increasingly tense. Suddenly, Jeff started talking about a murder that happened on a road just like the one we were on. He described it in graphic detail, then leaned in and said, "You know, they never found the guy who did it." For the first time, I noticed a large hunting knife clipped to his belt. I felt a wave of panic wash over me. Jake sped up, trying to get to the next town as quickly as possible. We all exchanged nervous glances, too scared to confront Jeff directly. Just as we saw signs of a rest stop, Jeff leaned forward and said, "I need to use the bathroom." Jake pulled over, and as soon as Jeff got out, we sped off, leaving him behind. I know it sounds cowardly, but we were terrified. We reported the encounter to the local police when we reached our destination. They checked the area, but didn't find anyone matching Jeff's description. We later learned there had been several reports of a man fitting his description harassing travelers on that stretch of highway. I've never felt such relief as I did when we finally reached Denver safely. That experience made me realize how quickly a situation can go from normal to life-threatening. Never again will I pick up a hitchhiker, no matter how harmless they seem. So this happened to my girlfriend and me on a road trip last summer. We were driving from Seattle to San Francisco, taking our time and enjoying the sights along the way. One night, we ended up needing a place to stay, and the only option available was this old, rundown hotel just off the highway. The place didn't look too welcoming, but it was late, and we were exhausted. The sign flickered, and the paint was peeling off the walls. We figured it was probably fine for one night. So we went in and booked a room. The old guy at the front desk gave us a key and told us we were the only guests that night, which felt a bit eerie. The room was musty and outdated, but we didn't care much. After freshening up, we went to bed, hoping to get a good night's sleep before continuing our trip early the next morning. That's when things started getting weird. Around midnight, I woke up to the sound of whispering. At first, I thought it was just the wind, but then I heard it again. Soft, indistinct voices, right outside our door. I got up to check, but when I opened the door, there was nobody there. I chalked it up to my imagination and went back to bed. A little while later, both my girlfriend and I were jolted awake by loud banging on the walls. It sounded like someone was running up and down the hallway, hitting the walls as they went. Petrified, we called the front desk, but there was no answer. I decided to investigate. With a flashlight in hand, I stepped into the dimly lit hallway. The hallway was empty, but the temperature had dropped noticeably, and the whispers started again, coming from all directions. I quickly returned to our room and locked the door. My girlfriend suggested we leave immediately, but I convinced her to wait till morning, thinking it was too dangerous to drive while sleep-deprived. We tried to sleep, but the noises continued throughout the night. Knocking on our door, faint laughter, and what sounded like someone dragging something heavy across the floor. By dawn, we had had enough. We packed our bags and hurried to the front desk to check out. The old man wasn't there, but there was a note saying to leave the key on the counter. As we were driving away, I did a quick search on my phone about the motel and found out it had a dark past. Years ago, it was the site of a gruesome murder spree. The killer was never caught, and since then, guests reported strange occurrences. The place had such a bad reputation that it eventually went out of business. But no one bothered to take down the sign, so unsuspecting travelers like us still ended up there. We were both shaken up for the rest of our trip, and to this day, we get chills talking about that night. If you're ever on the road and see a rundown motel with an old flickering sign, do yourself a favor and keep driving. Thanks for sticking around till the end. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to give the video a like and leave a comment with your thoughts. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a terrifying tale. See you in the next one.